So let's go ahead and talk about this next assignment. Natalie, give me a quick audible. Is the screen being displayed?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So this next assignment is called Replace Your Face, and it's going to entail you finding a high resolution photograph online of a famous individual that you admire. Now, I want to advise you that when you pick the individual, realize that you're going to have to write 750 words about why you chose this individual. So I would encourage you to choose wisely. So the goal for this is to find a high-res image online of this individual that you admire. This is Amelia Earhart here. This one right here is Johnny Cash. This is actually Destin Sester. I had him a couple years ago, and he's almost a spitting image for Johnny Cash. So the goal is to find a high-res image that you like online, and then to photograph your face in the same lighting and angle of view, okay, as the same person that you want to swap out. So if I want to swap out a person's face, I'm going to have mom or dad or brother or sister help me, okay? And I'm going to have the picture available for them to look at, maybe on a computer or on another phone, so that they can go ahead and direct me, tilt my head up, down, left, right, smile, eyes closed, eyes up, that kind of thing. And they're going to take the shot for you. So this may take a little bit of trial and error. And once you get that shot, then you're going to skillfully mask your face back in to the image of the person that you've chosen. Okay, so this is called Replace Your Face. You can see this is from Princess Bride. This student, I can't remember who the actress was, but she replaced her face out for this actress right here. This was Elvis, so you can see that this student dropped his face in on Elvis. Babe Ruth here on the right-hand side. Obviously, the Mona Lisa and stuff like this is really fun because when students choose kind of Renaissance paintings, well, we have to address a couple things. Color cast from the aged painting, but also texture, usually from the brush strokes. So this student ended up using a Photoshop filter to add texture to her face. And we also adjusted the color balance of her face to match the overall color balance of the entire image. This is another Amelia Earhart image right here. This is Madame Curie, Armstrong, astronaut. I can't remember who this is. Love this shot though. I love the red contrast. This one, I think the angle view and everything looks really good, but you'll notice there's a lot of issues with the editing here. So remember, we're going to be using masking to do this that I've shown you previously, and we're going to reinforce that again today with another example as well as an exercise that you'll complete for me. But if you look at this image, her face is overly dark, and it looks like that the student got confused between the mask and the data in the same layer because we can see some dark brush strokes here. So today will be a good review for masking because this is what you're really going to use to effectively drop your face into this photo. So you'll need to take into account black and white. Is there film grain, size, scale? You'll need to take into account color balance, all that stuff. This student dropped her face in as Jackie Kennedy right here. Oh, I can't remember this painter's name, but this student, she loved, I think it's Bob something. And the guy that does the happy little clouds, the little painting and stuff, she dropped herself in here. She did a pretty decent job. It was very hard for her to mask back in his beard, but she did a pretty decent job overall. Another Marilyn Monroe shot. Obviously, that's not Marilyn, but she did a pretty good job of dropping her face in there. This was supposed to be Hugh Hefner. I think Hugh Hefner probably passed away recently, but this student did a pretty good job at masking his face in there for Hugh Hefner. I can't remember who this is. Now, one of the things I'll point out about this image, the masking's done really well, and the lighting is good. The scale as she resized her face, everything matches great. But I want you to take a look at the overall focus of the entire image. Notice that our eyes get drawn right to her glasses and her face. Her face is a little bit crisper than the overall image. So this one, I would say, soften the face a little bit by using a filter such as Gaussian blur to subtly blur that face to get it to match the overall range of focus in the image. But all in all, this is a pretty nice one. Obviously, Star Wars, this student masked her face in for Carrie Fisher right there. General Patton, this one he did a pretty good job at dropping himself in. It was pretty easy because he was able to make a selection along the top brim of the helmet and then along his own ears, and then he masked up against that selection, which worked out well. Princess Diana, who passed well before your time, well before you guys were born. Is either Ben Franklin or Washington? I can't remember who this is supposed to be, but again, student used a filter to go ahead and match, as well as add a different color cast to match the overall feel of the painting. I think he probably could have cropped this image a little bit, got rid of some of this negative space. It's pretty big out there. It's a little distracting. It kind of competes. So as you're looking at images and working on images throughout the year, I want you guys to think about composition. That's very important. This young man dropped himself in as Ellen DeGeneres on the Ellen Show. I'm not sure who this is supposed to be. This is, it's probably some wildlife guy. I'm not sure who, though. All right. So let's come back to that. And let's get rid of that. All right, really quickly, before I hop into the masking demo, your goal here, the objective for this assignment, is to, one, pick a person that you admire from the last 150 years. You are going to have to write 750 words about that individual. 3-paragraph structure. Intro, a body, and a conclusion. I'm not your English teacher. I just want to know what you're thinking, okay? I'm not going to grade this for grammar. It's based off of completion, okay? Now, if I see stuff that's horribly grammatically incorrect, I'll probably go, hey, what do you think about writing it like this? But if I have that time, who knows? So first, you're going to go ahead and write about the person that you've chosen, and then you're going to go ahead and find the image online. And you can do that anytime, even now or while you're writing. But when you do the search online, use the Google image search, and generally what you ought to do to find a high-res image of someone online is you should do their name plus wallpaper. So for instance, Elvis Presley plus wallpaper in the search, and that will search all the high-res wallpapers for backgrounds on your desktop, and you can use those because they're just pictures that are a high resolution. You can also, if you have, say, maybe a picture at home of something or somebody you want to use, maybe in a book, or maybe it's a relative that you admire, a great-great-grandparent or something. You could always go ahead and take that photograph, put it on a flat surface with really flat lighting, and take a picture of it to get it into a digital form. So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this. So for the rest of this week, I kind of want you to start thinking about that in the back of your head. Who am I going to go ahead and choose, okay? Because by Monday of next week, I'm going to ask you to have your high-res photo chosen so that you and I can look at it together in class one-on-one, and then by Wednesday of next week, I will ask for the 750-word write-up on why you've chosen this individual, okay? And this assignment will not be due next week. The assignment will be due the following week. And I think that puts us into the right around the 28th, last week of September, okay? So I do want to remind you what you have due this week, however, is your portraiture assignment. That'll be due this Friday, okay? No later than 3 p.m., please. And again, I'm still not tagging you with late penalties, but still, please try and make an effort to turn stuff in on time so you don't start to become overwhelmed with my class and other classwork that you have. So really quickly before I hop into the masking demo for the Replace Your Face, does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. I saw what was said in the chat. I'll take a look at that here before the end of class, and we'll try to get that addressed. All right, I'm going to keep recording, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up Photoshop now. And Natalie, give me a quick audible because I can't see you. Is Photoshop displaying okay?
Yeah, I can see it.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So Photoshop or Photopea, whichever one you're using currently right now, we're going to go ahead and use either one of these apps to do masking. Now remember that the total strength, or the three primary strengths of Photoshop, are layers, selections, and masking. We've already been kind of working within layers. Selections, we saw a brief introduction to selections when we saw the eye whitening and the teeth whitening on the JED technical exercise. So now let's go ahead and take a look again and revisit masking, because again, it's one of the most useful techniques that you can use. So if I get this in full screen there. All right, oops, there we go. All right, so let's go and take a look here. So my example, I thought this would be fun. I'm going to go ahead and do the Step Brothers poster with Will Ferrell and I can't remember this guy's name. I think it's H. Macy, maybe. Either way, they're both funny as hell. And so my goal is to go ahead and to
John C. Reilly.
John C. Reilly. Thank you so much. I don't know why I always think he's Macy. All right. So looking at these, I have photographed two people. I photographed Dolman, who you may or may not remember from the beginning, or from a couple years ago. He was our resident police officer. Okay, and then additionally, I have photographed Bill, and a lot of you guys, if you're a sophomore on up, already know who Bill is. He's our on-campus security guy, kind of checks in you guys, and kind of rides around on campus. So my goal here is to go ahead and to mask both their faces into this image. So I'm going to go ahead and start with, I'm thinking, Will Ferrell. So I'm going to turn layer visibility off for Bill so I don't see him. And notice here, I'm going to pull my layers palette out so we can see this. And let's increase that palette option so that we can go ahead and see what's happening on the masks as soon as I start to apply it. So I've got Bill, pardon me. Yeah, I've got Dolman selected. He's obviously too big. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to resize him. But I want to make sure I resize him correctly. So I'm going to come over to his layer, and from within the layers palette, I'm going to reduce the opacity of his image so that I can see through him to the background image. Because again, my goal is to scale his face accurately to drop on top of Will Ferrell's. Now, to go ahead and scale him, I'm going to hop into what we call the free transform tool. I can get into this tool very easily by doing Command T, and notice that when I do that, it puts what we call a bounding box all the way around the image, and there are handles at all four corners as well as in the middle. I can click and hold, okay, and can someone mute their mic, please? So looking at this, I can go ahead and click and hold, and notice that I can scale him up or down. On newer versions of Photoshop and the most recent updates, you do not have to hold Shift. Generally, we used to have to hold Shift to constrain it proportionally to the same shape, but they've updated that and gotten rid of that. They reversed it now. So if I want to change the shape, I hold Shift, and notice that I can squish or squash his head as I see fit. So I'm going to go ahead, scale him down. Let's move him on over, and I'm going to zoom in. And generally, the eyes, for most people, are the same width apart. So I'm going to evaluate the eyes here and compare them to Will Ferrell's as I drop them in. That's pretty close, right about there. So I'm going to bring him on up in here. And that looks like pretty decent placement. So now I'm going to go ahead and bring the opacity of this layer all the way back up. I need to commit myself to this transformation because notice I still have the handles. To do that, I can go up to the top toolbar options and click on that check mark to commit myself, or I could very simply hit return or enter on the keyboard. So now I've got him pretty well positioned. Now I want to apply my layer mask. Remember, we do that from within the layers palette. So with him selected, I'll come down to the bottom and notice that if I mouse over and let my mouse hang there, it shows you what that icon does. In this case, I want to add a layer mask. So I'm going to click, and now notice that the mask has been added to this layer. Notice there's a link. That means that this mask is linked to this data. Additionally, notice that the mask is selected, and I know that because it has the 4 corner brackets. I can go back and forth, okay? So always make sure you're on the mask when you think you're masking. Otherwise, you could just be on the layer and accidentally be painting black and white. So let's look at this. Remember, black reveals, white hides, and I want to use a paintbrush when I do this. And I want to make sure that I adjust my paintbrush to make sure that it has 0 hardness. I want that brush to be completely feathered. And right now the size is set to 13 pixels. Again, I can scale that brush up or down just by using the bracket keys. So I'm going to leave this at about 100% right now. And I'm going to use that to go ahead and get rid of the background information that I definitely don't need. And then I will change the opacity of my brush to kind of fine tune. So let's turn this off and on so we can see. And this is good to know because in that way it indicates areas that you've missed. I see a little area down here that I've missed, a little bit in here. Do more on the neckline right there. All right, it's not looking too bad. All right, so now let's go ahead and take the brush opacity down so I can build this up incrementally. And I'm going to go with about 23%. I'm going to bring the size of my brush down a little bit, and I'm going to do multiple clicks as I go over. And I want to build this up incrementally. Notice I'm going all the way around, and then I'm going to start back over here again. And notice I'm trying to keep my brush kind of dialed in with his hairline. Notice now that we see Dolman's hairline starting to disappear the more and more clicks that I do. In fact, what we're doing is we're bringing Will Ferrell's hair forward. Now take a look. Take a look right over here. So here's the hole. It's kind of like a Cheerio, okay, all the way around. So the black area represents a hole that we're seeing through this top layer to the layer underneath here. I'm going to turn this layer off and on, and again doing that so I can go ahead and see if there's any areas I need to continue to work on. Down here, looks like down in here a little bit. I'm going to try and sweep his face just a little bit there to bring him in. It's not looking too shabby. Alright, I'm going to change my opacity now to about 10%. And I feel like I messed up right in here. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm going to switch to white here. And let me see. Okay, so now that looks like, let's see, that must be part of Will Ferrell then. So let's see if I need to mask, I need to mask that back further to kind of get rid of that. So I'm going to bring more Will Ferrell's forehead back in to kind of blend this. Okay. All right. So that doesn't look too bad. Let's double check, make sure that I've got rid of everything there. Now, one of the things that I want to look at here, you can notice that there's a big amount of difference as far as contrast is concerned between Will Ferrell's and his. So I want to take a look today at what we call an adjustment layer. Adjustment layers allow us to adjust individual things like brightness, contrast, saturation, exposure, all kinds of different things. So I'm going to show you where to access the adjustment layers. We do adjustment layers from within the layers palette. So whatever layer that you want to affect, you need to have that layer selected. I'm going to come down here and notice now that I've got another icon here. It looks like a half circle, a black circle and white circle, kind of cut in half. Create new fill or adjustment layer. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to come down to brightness and contrast and click. Notice when I do that, it brings a layer and creates a new layer all the way at the top, and it says brightness and contrast. By the nature of this layer, it is a masked layer. Here's the properties button. If I go ahead and double click that, did it bring my properties up? And I'm just not, it did. My properties are right here. They're already there. So clicking that will go ahead and bring forward this guy right here. And I want to take a look at the actual options. Brightness is one of them. Let's brighten him up a little bit. And notice as I do that, I'm paying attention to how it's affecting the overall scene. I want him to match. Let's bring the contrast up now a little bit. A little bit more brightness, I'm thinking. Now, notice what is happening here. Can you see how this is affecting the entire layer? We don't want that. So that's a good example of how an adjustment layer affects every layer beneath it. Well, Mr. Jefferson, how do we use that layer to control that one then? I'm going to show you. We're going to link this layer specifically to this layer. And we do that by mousing up gently to the line that divides these two layers right there. And then I'm going to hold Option down on the keyboard. That would be Alt on Chromebooks or PCs. Hold down and notice my icon changes. It's a little square icon with a downward arrow. I'm going to click, and now notice this layer is only going to affect the data on this layer. I know that because there's that little downward arrow pointing down. So notice now that when I affect the brightness, it's only linked to this layer. So now I can adjust this brightness in relationship to kind of what I'm seeing here with Riley's face. Take the contrast down or up, but I think he needs more contrast, maybe right about in here. Okay, so there he matches the scene a lot better. So now let's take a quick look. We can recap this by just doing Bill's here. Now, of course, Bill's face is too large, and notice that I need to scale him down. Another thing that you can see here happening right now is that you can see that we can see the hole through here because Bill is actually in front of this area. So we're seeing the stacking order here. Notice that if I grab the Move tool and I move Bill around, you can see that because he's in front of the background layer, he's obscuring this layer. Even though we can still kind of see the mask and everything is working. So let's take a look at first. Let's adjust the opacity of Bill's layer. Let's bring him on down. Maybe to about 60% or so. And now let's go ahead and jump into the Free Transform tool. Let's scale him down. It's clearly too small. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And again, we want to try and match those eyes. A little bit wider. Also notice that Riley's head here is kind of tilted. Okay? Notice his eyes are at an angle. So I'm going to go ahead and go past the corner here. We get back into that Free Transform tool. I'm going to go past the corner. Notice what happens to my mouse pointer. See how it becomes a curved arrow? I'm going to click and hold, and then I'm going to rotate a little bit to try and match those eyes up. I'm going to grab the image, bring it up. That looks pretty dang close. I think it could be just a little bit bigger. Right there looks good. All right, I'm going to hit the check mark to commit myself to that transformation. I'm going to increase the opacity back to 100% for Bill's face. And now I'm going to repeat what I did on this previous layer up here. I'm going to go ahead and attach a layer mask to Bill by clicking. And then remember, we use the paintbrush and black or white or varying opacities of black or white to blend and feather in Bill's face into the background. So first I'm going to crank my brush opacity up to 100% just so I can get rid of this background. I don't need that background back there. I'll let it cut a little bit into Bill's hair, which is fine. Okay, that looks pretty good overall. Now I'm thinking, looking at this, I'm still feeling like, now that I start to compare Bill to this guy's ears, I still feel that maybe Bill's a little bit too small. So I'm going to go back into that free transform tool, and I'm going to make him a little bit bigger. Let's bring that opacity back down. Okay, I think that looks better. Bring that opacity back up. And now let's go back and continue our masking. So I've got rid of all the background in the border pretty much. Turn this off and on. A little bit right here. Let's try and get rid of this stuff. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and adjust that brush opacity down to about between 10 and 15%. Multiple clicks, and you can hear me doing this. So what I'm doing is right now masking Bill's hairline into John C. Reilly's. And notice I'm trying to keep that brush kind of right at the edge. I don't want to change it too much. Now notice I've probably brought a little bit too much in over there on the left-hand side. So I'm going to have to kind of go back. You can see that area right there. So let's take a look how that looks if I add a little bit of white back in. No. Okay, so we need to add a lot more black back in then. So we really need to bring this area in. Let's increase our brush opacity a little bit more here so it works faster. Alright, so now let's see. Let's bring that brush opacity down. Go a little bit more. Man, I don't know if I still like that or not. I feel like Bill's face is a little bit narrow here at the top, so I'm going to have to do one more trick. And that means I'm going to have to go ahead and, I wonder if I could select both of these. No. I'm going to go ahead and do a different transform. I'm going to come in and do a perspective tweak. And let's go ahead. I think skew's the way I'm going to go. Skew will help me kind of bring that over a little bit. Trying to pay attention not to mess his face up too much. I think that will work. Let's see if I need to kind of move him back a little bit. Maybe to right about in there. So you can see that the masking, it doesn't happen quickly. You have to really kind of zoom in on the work and fine tune it. Also, he needs an adjustment layer as well. So let's remind ourselves, with that adjustment layer selected, we're going to come down here, brightness and contrast. And remember, this layer right here is going to control every layer beneath it. So we need to go ahead and actually link this layer specifically to Bill's face. So again, I'm going to hold Option or Alt, mouse between them, and then click. And notice we get that little downward arrow. So let's bring that brightness up. Let's bring that contrast up. Try and get Bill's face to match a little bit better in this shot. And that looks pretty good right about in there. So again, for this assignment, your goal is going to be to have someone help you, mom or dad, okay? You can go ahead and have them take the picture. That's completely fine. But what I want to make sure you do is that you provide them with a copy of the picture that you've chosen of this famous person online. That way they can go ahead and review it, and they can go, okay, turn your head to the left a little bit, look up, and you want to pay attention to lighting too, because that's going to be key. You want the lighting to match. Now that doesn't mean we can't do any kind of trick editing like with that soft light layer that I showed you guys earlier last week, and I think even this week, you can use that to go ahead and adjust the mask as well as adjust the data. So a lot of different ways to approach this. All right. So your goal for the rest of this week is to make sure that you get your rear ends in gear, because you do have an assignment due this Friday. Okay, that's the portraiture assignment. That's due by 3 o'clock. You should submit those, and let me double check and make sure. Let's see, classwork. You should submit those and would just write back to the same assignment that you see under photo assignments. It says portraiture. And I want to make sure that you guys do that by Friday. And I remember, I'm not doing late penalties, but I want you to stay on top of this work. Now, some of you failed to do some one-on-ones with me. So I'd be more than happy to get some one-on-ones done today, okay? And to make up for any lost kind of time or lost points. Okay, remember, I'm allowing you to recover and reclaim any points. So if you would like to recover some lost points that you've missed, I can do one-on-ones today for portraiture. So if you have those ready, go ahead and get them set up on your screen, and then I'll get a individual Google Meet up, and you can go ahead, you and I can hop on over to that other Google Meet, take about 5 minutes or so and take a look at your work. I feel it's important that I see your work, hopefully before you turn it in, so we can get some feedback. Looks like Nisi said she's first, okay? So with that said, why don't we get a list going in the chat? That will be a lot easier. That way when I come back, I can call you guys right out. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or concerns? Anything about the information that I related today, gang? Okay. With that said, if you do not have images, then you need to get started on it. You need to get going on shooting. Okay, that's important, because this assignment is due end of this week, okay? Also, you've got a new assignment on the books. Let's not forget that by next Monday, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and have your image chosen, okay? And then your write-up will be due that Wednesday of that week, next week, okay? So trying to stay on top of this. You will not have the replace your face will not be due next week. Just the things I just talked about will be due. It'll be due the following week. All right. With that said, hey, let's take a 10-minute break. I want to grab some more coffee. It's 8:40. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? I'll be back here at 8:50. Go get yourself some coffee, run to the restroom, get up and stretch your legs, and then let's knock out some one-on-ones and let's get some points for people. Okay, gang? Take a 10-minute break. Thank you.